you know, if you were running your own immigration policy, which of course Britain doesn't, because we're EU members, do you think it'd be a good idea to get a lot of people to come who didn't speak English? Do you think that would aid and abet integration in society? Well, the answer, of course, to that clearly is no. Do I think...
Do you favour some immigrants? Let's suppose one from Mogadishu, with the same skills, the same ability to speak English, but not as a first language, from one from Melbourne.
Do you have a
preference? Do you have a preference?
I have to confess, I do have a slight preference. I do think, naturally, that people from India and Australia are in some ways more likely to speak English, understand common law and have a connection with this country than some people that come perhaps from countries that haven't fully recovered from being behind the Iron Curtain. But that's irrelevant. When you have an Australian-style point system, what you do is you take out of that all subjectivity, and you look at things on a purely objective basis.
So you don't give points for being Australian or points for being Judeo-Christian?
No, you get points because you've got languages and skills.
But why wouldn't you? Because you just said you'd prefer the Judeo-Christian or the Commonwealth immigrants.
Yeah, look, this country has long associations and links with Australia, with India, with countries like that, all right? And we have been friends together in crisis many, many times. And what we've done is we've turned our backs on them. We've turned our backs on them in terms of trade, by making life very difficult for them. And we've really become a country whose political elite and much of whose media elite are totally incapable of thinking about the world outside the European club.
You say that. In fact, your manifesto says the liberal metropolitan elite often tells us patriotism is wrong. Who is this liberal metropolitan elite who says patriotism is wrong?
Well, I think you only have to look at the tweet, and I won't name her because that would be really quite nasty, but a certain Labour MP you know, put out a tweet of a chap with a white van and with a cross of St George outside his house, as if to say, look at these ghastly people. And there is too much of that. There is too much snobbery. And actually, that's what it's about. It is London-based snobbery about the way ordinary folk feel. And you know, out there in the country, a lot of people are unashamedly patriotic, and that's considered to be awful in London.
I don't know. I just wonder whether there are different patriotic visions, and there are certain people who you would call liberal metropolitan elite who have a different vision of Britain. Did you see the Paddington Bear movie last year?
No.
Terrific movie with a rather sort of moving, in a sense, proclamation of the virtues of multiculturalism, which I know you hate because he's a bear and he's different and he feels very at home and is made to feel welcome here.
I think using the word...
Would that be a sort of metropolitan elite movie that is kind of a travesty of British patriotism and British values?
The fact that you throw the word in hate like that as a sort of off-the-cuff comment...
But you have lots of insults
as if, of course, Mr Farage hates things... What's your evidence of that?
Well, you said in your manifesto, you say multiculturalism is divisive.
What is your evidence that I hate it?
But you say it's divisive. You say it's a politically correct experiment. A political correction experiment, you've called it.
You've just used a very strong word, and I'm picking up on it. I don't hate anything.
You don't hate multiculturalism?
I don't hate multiculturalism.
But you don't like it. Can we go that far?
We have made some real mistakes with state-sponsored multiculturalism and division within society, and that's something which, when I was saying it a few years ago, was considered to be dreadful. Now people like Trevor Phillips say it.
Look, was it patriotic to support Mo Farah when he won his gold medals in the Olympic Games?
I thought he was fantastic. I thought the interview after he'd won that second gold medal, and it was that Saturday night, and we were all there cheering at home, you know, watching it, and there was a reporter interviewed him and said, well, you know, wouldn't you really have rather, you know, won this medal?
Right. Well, that wasn't he wasn't metropolitan elite to that report.
And Mo Farah's answer was, listen, mate, you know, I have made this my home. I am British, and I'm proud to.
One of your candidates, one of your local government candidates.
That I think really did epitomise what this country can and should be,
and with the local government candidates, one of his local, put on his Facebook page, can somebody explain, Mo Farah, African from Somalia, who trains in America, won a gold medal for Great Britain. Now, is he more patriotic than the liberal metropolitan elite,
I tell you what's interesting,
who you attack for non-patriotic
well, let me now attack the liberal metropolitan elite in the shape of you talking to me, all right? When you interviewed David Cameron, when you interviewed Miliband and Clegg, you know, did you go through a list of their not just council candidates.
No, I'm asking about your his patriotism and the notion of patriotism.
But it's very interesting
that you use accusing other people of being unpatriotic.
It's very interesting that you do what everybody in the liberal metropolitan elite does. You pick up a comment from somebody in UKIP, made on Facebook, probably late at night. What you never do is challenge the other leaders about why their elected councillors
those other parties,
and officials
don't go round,
are serving prison sentences.
No one says you're unpatriotic
for paedophilia, are serving prison sentences for racial assault, and yet just one person in UKIP says this, and you attempt to portray that as being the party.
No one says you're unpatriotic. No one says you're unpatriotic. You go to the US and talk about Sharia ghettos in Europe. No one says you're unpatriotic for that. You're the party that says other people are going around making patriotism seem like a sin. I suspect some people, I think, simply think you're living or yearning for a country that has moved on. I'm going to give you one last example, okay? This is another one. This is not about race, because I think this is about a different age in a way. It's about breastfeeding, okay? Now, you called it common sense that women in a public place who want to breastfeed a baby should maybe go into the corner to do that, so other people don't feel awkward about it. Now tell me why the woman should go into the corner.
You are trying terribly hard here.
I'm trying to get across.
No, you're trying terribly hard. Let me tell you what I said. I was asked the question about this. There's been a big row with Claridge's. I said, look, personally, I'm not bothered about this at all. But I know that
other people are.
But some other people are. And so the question that was asked of me, so do you think women should be sent into the toilet to breastfeed? And I said, no, I don't think that. Perhaps asked to sit in the corner. And classic of the way this operates, this is Farage is against breastfeeding mothers. I couldn't care less.
Right. But would you argue that it would be as suitable for people who feel awkward when the woman wants to breastfeed the baby, for them to go and stand in the corner and the woman to stay where she is?
In this particular case, it was people who'd paid a lot of money to go to Claridge's for tea, and some of them didn't like it. But I couldn't care less.
Okay. Look, let's move on very briefly on your manifesto. Before we talk about, ask a question or two on this manifesto, your last manifesto, it had your name in it, actually. You signed the bottom of the introduction.
The 11-page foreword.
You called it straight talking, you defended it on TV, and then you then said last year, I didn't read it, it was drivel, it was nonsense.
I was asked to look at I wasn't the leader of the UKIP, but I was asked to look at an 12-page document, which I read. I thought, well, this all looks really rather sensible, and I was quite happy to append my name to it. I subsequently learned that 486 pages, I mean, not quite War and Peace, but almost getting there, had been put up on our website and called the manifesto. And clearly that was a massive mistake, and it was a nonsense.
And it was a nonsense. But it was straight talking. That was on each page, I think, of the manifesto last time. Was it straight talking then?
Well, the 12 pages was, all right, but the 486 wasn't, and it was incoherent, and it was actually the kind of mistake that happens with a small political party with almost no budget at all. These,
let's talk about this manifesto.
It takes time.
Let's talk about this manifesto. You've made a lot of spending commitments in the manifesto. A number of them have been costed. You've got a lot of savings that you make in the manifesto. They've been costed. Overall, I think you save $5 billion, but you say you want to clear the deficit, or the current deficit, by 2017, which is going to take another $30 billion or so. Where's that? How are you going to pay for that?
Well, firstly, we have looked at the government's future projections for what they're going to do, and said we will. Hopefully, this time they'll keep to them, and we'll stick with them. But there's another factor to this, and that is one of the arguments that has been lost completely with an economic policy, which is, I know, very much your area. The argument almost is, a pound here, a pound there, that if we cut taxes by a pound here, there has to be a compensating increase somewhere else in revenues. Actually, there is a dynamic force with tax cuts.
Right.
That if tax cuts are significant, and what we would propose.
But you're not proposing significant enough ones to earn revenues rather than lose revenues, are you?
Hang on, 18.
Is that the basis of your economics? That you're going to cut taxes and hope more money comes in?
By cutting taxes by £18 billion, I think there is a very strong argument that says that will lead to dynamic growth within the economy. And we certainly saw examples of this. Going back in time, we have seen examples of this. No, we're not.
Well, that's okay. That's a very clear statement of your hope
we're not saying
how to get the deficit down.
We're not saying
you're going to cut
that
taxes.
We're not
deficit
saying
will go.
we're not saying we're relying on it entirely, but I think there is a reasonably good reason, good basis of historical fact to think that might work.
Look, just a couple of things. You've costed this manifesto and you've had it independently audited, but there are a lot of proposals that are not costed in there. Smaller car class sizes, that's not included in the costings. How much is that going to cost?
Well, I think it's all costed, actually, and that is why
smaller class sizes isn't. We've looked at the table.
Well, you better go and have that argument with the think tank that looked at it all right?
Border agency, an extra 2,500 staff.
But of course, if you have controlled immigration, you will have smaller class sizes, particularly at
you don't know what the costs
particularly
are. Getting
at
schools to provide
school,
childcare. You don't. It's not costed.
Well, we've said parents would get involved in that. That
Okay,
actually, what we try to do is to try. We talk a lot about early years childcare in this country, 2, 3, 4-year-olds, and we talk about 15 hours a week, or should it be more, that the government helps with. What doesn't really get talked about is the fact that from 5 years old, children are going to school from whether it's from 9 o'clock till 3:30 or whatever. Actually, we're talking there about providing a framework where there could be wraparound childcare from 8 in the morning till 6 in the evening,
and that's going to cost nothing.
And using people.
That's going to cost nothing.
And using people who are volunteers. Obviously with the right checks and everything else.
We're just about out of time. After the Rochester and Stroud by-election, you talked about winning dozens of MPs.
I never said that. I'm very careful.
You didn't say you would.
Ever
you
put a number on
didn't say
it.
you would.
No,
you said, can we do this in a few dozen seats or whatever the number it may be? Yeah. We can. So you referred to dozens of MPs. My question is, what are you hoping for now?
We are targeting several dozen seats, exactly as I said we would.
How many do you think you can win? What will be a good night? What will be a bad night for you?
There are really three criteria that you...
Criteria, not seats, right.
There are 3 criteria that UKIP will be measured on. Have we got a decent number of people over the line in first place? Have we got more than a handful, maybe in a double figures?
More than a handful,
whatever. That's the first criteria. Second criteria is what is our share of the national vote. And the third criteria, longer term for the party, is how many seats have we come second in? Okay. And what does that mean longer term for politics? We have, as a party, through 2013 and 2014, jumped some pretty incredible hurdles. This one, as I look at it, is like Beecher's Brook. It's a big hurdle. If we get over this and land safely on the other side, then I think UKIP's potential is massive.
Right. You have said you will resign as leader of UKIP if you don't win Thanet South. Do you regret saying that? Because the polls have by no means make it that likely.
I don't regret it at all, no. The truth is...
So you may be in the last couple of weeks now of your leadership of the party.
Well, David Cameron could be in the last 2 weeks of his leadership. Miliband could be in the last 2 weeks. Clegg could be. I mean, look, we could all be gone.
Your party is often accused of being a one-man band.
One person will come through. No, look, I believe that I've given everything to try to make UKIP a political success, but I have to get over this particular Beecher's Brook. I'm confident, and I believe that I will.
You... must have found it very gruelling. You are a big part of what the party's public face is. You've had at least one night where you haven't been sleeping, and I know that I just wonder whether you're going to look forward to when all this is over, and whether you're operating at 100% at the moment.
I think, to be honest with you, in the earlier part of the campaign, I wasn't, and I wasn't feeling quite as sharp and as fit as I should have been, and I think that's because, frankly, in my enthusiasm for UKIP to succeed in this election, I got my diary planning wrong, and I was doing way too much. I've readjusted that, and I have to say the last 2 or 3 days I'm feeling pretty bouncy, back to being a bit more like Tigger. I'm enjoying it and looking forward to the next fortnight.
Nigel Farage, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
The Leader interviews continue next Monday night at 7:30 when Evan Davis interviews SNP leader Nicola Sturgeon.